Okay, I'd like to start this Facebook Live event off. Welcome to the Ward 9 Facebook Live event. I have Mayor Sandra Masters with me tonight. We're here to come out and answer any questions Ward 9 residents or anyone else watching, I guess for that matter, might have, from anything to budget, to what's going on in the area, to the new proposed development from Carry the Kettle First Nation. I guess as we get started, I might as well start giving a little bit of backstory. I think that the biggest information piece people have been asking about has been Carry the Kettle. So I'll just kind of do a quick recap on what's going on there. About a month and a half ago, Carry the Kettle First Nation entered into a memorandum of understanding with the city of Regina. Apparently, they've owned this land for over 20 years already, and they've decided they want to become a developer with the land. And in that, they want to cooperate with the city to develop it like any other area within the city. They have a general concept plan they've released for viewing. It's not a fixed development plan. It's just a rough idea so far. And from what it looks like, it's a mix of residential with a little bit of commercial in the mix as well. The steps it has to go through as it becomes an actual development are a few, because the arrangement that's going on, first of all, is a memorandum of understanding. And from there, they've also asked to go into a municipal service agreement in the future. And what that would be is an agreement between the city and the First Nation stating that they want to be part of the city and receive all the services any other resident of Regina would receive in exchange for the associated fees that go with that. So once again, this is generally just another development within our city. There's been a slight point of contention in the concept plan. There's a casino been laid out as well. There's been a lot of interest and a little bit of rejection of that idea. And I guess anything that's new sometimes is a bit scary. Once again, just kind of wanted to mention, this is a concept plan. This isn't something that's set in stone. In going through this, people have mentioned engagement and a chance to give a little bit of input. One of the benefits of this memorandum of understanding is that that's exactly what Carry the Kettle's done, is they've said that they want to be good partners in this development. They will be looking for some input and have consideration. What's unique about this is that the municipality of Regina doesn't actually have any jurisdiction or say with that input. This is being cooperation at its best, willingly. So I'd really like to say thank you for that. I think that's really important when you're going through this type of arrangement that we really haven't entered to this extent in our city before. To start on a cooperative note, knowing that we are doing this together is really, really important. Timelines have been talked about quite a bit as well. This development settles out with the 300,000 population point of our city. That type of a population point is best defined in decades, not in months or years. There's many things that have to be settled before we get to that point. So here again, just to put everyone's thoughts in order, this is all early stages planning. And I guess that's about all I can really say right off the cuff with that. Do you have anything to add, Mayor Masters?
Thanks, Jason. Please call me Sandra on the call. That would be beneficial.
I will do. I'll fumble way less with that, Sandra.
I think probably a little bit more with regard to some of the steps required. So the MOU was requested to be signed from the city with the band because the band has to take it back to its members. Carry the Kettle, I believe, has approximately 5,000 band members. They have a structure which has them have a council, and then they have a board, and then they have their general population. And so they kind of needed the MOU signed with the city in order to take it back to their band. Their band has to vote on it. If the band is favorable from a popular vote perspective, they will come back for that MSA. And I think what's important with the municipal service agreement that people fully understand, and I can tell you that my own family members didn't understand it, so I feel the need to explain it, is that The municipal servicing agreement is meant to replace property taxes. And so everything that they're going to pay the city for, the MSA has a dollar value attached to it, which is the equivalent of all property taxes and service fees and any levies that the city would levy against a non-Indigenous owned property. That's what the MSA covers. And so they're paying their proportionate share. And from a city's perspective, that's pretty much how the federal government came up with these MSAs for municipalities. In order to apply for urban reserve status, they absolutely have to have an MSA negotiated. So there's probably a year or two still of steps to undertake as it relates to getting to that point. Then they apply to the federal government for urban reserve status. And that's a Treaty 4 entitlement. They're entitled to that. And so down months or potentially years down the road, a year or two down the road, that's kind of where the process will go when the federal government approves that. The benefit for Indigenous and why they like to go with an urban reserve is that it does have benefits for Indigenous individuals that live on that urban reserve land. So it's a little bit about the economic fairness within Truth and Reconciliation. And as it relates to the casino, I might as well hop on that one. Casino, in terms of who has the rights to the next casino in terms of bans, is negotiated through the gaming framework through FSIN. So through the Federation of the National Federation of Indigenous Nations of Canada, they have a gaming framework that they work through in terms of kind of awarding who gets the next potential casino. As it relates to the city of Regina, from a growth perspective, Saskatoon and Regina are, I think, sort of predicted or projected to grow over the next number of decades. In terms of producing a second or making a second casino in the city of Regina, our population would probably need to be around the 400,000 person level. They don't like to cannibalize on existing casinos. So we have one clearly downtown. And so the next one, we would have to be at an even more exponential level of population. So that's kind of what I would add in terms of, so from a timing perspective, you're right, we're talking decades. But even in terms of the MOU, there's still hurdles for the band to get through, and then they'll come back to the city and then they'll go to the federal government. That's what I'd offer.
Thanks, Sandra. And I guess just to throw this out there, I'm really looking for this to be successful. This is development in our city. It's a partnership that we've all really talked about needing to be done for quite some time. Just to reaffirm, the people who would be living in this development would be everyday citizens like anyone else. It's not set aside for any one people. So this is a cooperation. I guess I should reach out to let folks know if you have any questions, you can put it into the comments. We'll get to them from there. And I'm not seeing any yet, so I'll just keep on going. I do have some other news here to share with you about Ward 9. I guess as of the election, I took a little bit of information from the residents, and I had some compiled going into the election. Some of the things I brought forward to administration since have been crossed over at a couple points. The first one I want to bring up is there's been a lot of questions about pedestrian crossing at McCarthy and Cope. I have been dealing with this with administration. There's been traffic counts done and are being studied. Some of the points I brought forward to administration had to do with the lighting along that section, their narrowness of the road, how the crosswalk actually aligns. A lot of people have mentioned the visibility aspect for the safety. I've really tried to communicate that strongly. And, you know, just with all McCarthy dropping down to 2 lanes from 4 and having no street lights on the east side of the road, I think that there's a lot of added problems in that area that they should pay extra attention to. So I've been working through administration and trying to bring that viewpoint to them. A couple questions for Skyview about the detention pond for stormwater being used as a skating rink. I tried to get on that in the late fall to see if I could get any action on that. They don't use detention ponds for skating rinks. I kind of asked them to re-examine that decision. Just asking for the proximity of any skating facilities near Skyview and the actual amount of water that ever sits on the detention pond. It's only there for flood events. So I know I'm having them re-examine that to kind of see if they can have a different viewpoint, if there's any more thought that needs to happen. A lot of traffic along the Watch Corridor, McCarthy to Radway, along the way to St. Angela and Plainsview School, along with the Cope McCarthy crosswalk, I've kind of asked them to watch the traffic in that area as well. I know it's been building. I've heard a lot back from the residents. That intersection at Radway and Wadge is very, very busy. I've asked for them to do traffic counts and make sure that the proper traffic mitigation is put in place there. So I know that's something we're studying. Over closer to the West Hill Edgewater, traffic at Pinky Road and Sherwood Drive. There's a park right on the access edge there. Pinky Road is up for renewal in 2022. This will be changing traffic in that area. Along with that change, I've made sure that they're looking at traffic projections and pedestrian interfaces right at that crosswalk in that area. And in light of potential construction vehicles, so I've brought that to attention. Let's see what else we got here. The big blue bins. The big blue bins on Courtney Street. I've been very busy with that since the election. I noticed that they're quite well used. They seem to be very needed for recycling in our area, but a very unpopular location. I've brought quite a few other suggestions to administration to study. Quite a few of them were already studied by administration and rejected either by the owner of the land or for traffic reasons or accessibility by the truck that needs to dump the bins. The last two I haven't heard back yet are for the Jack Hamilton Arena and the pumping station just off of McCarthy in the northwest corner. So I know there's still action looking if there's alternate locations for the bins, but I just will mention looking at the amount that they've been filled, it looks like it is an asset that we do need in our area because they are quite well used. Have you heard anything about the bins, Sandra? Anyone reach out to you about them? They were very very contentious. They appeared out of nowhere.
I have not heard anything about the bins, but I think following our discussion earlier, some concerns about just how some of these things are arrived at. So I think we'll follow up on that in terms of, especially giving ward counselors heads up so that both the education piece as well as just some of the thought process that goes behind these things, or whether or not, the process that goes behind them, I think would be worth a revisit.
Okay, we got a question here. Jason and Sandra, you may have touched on this, but what input does the city of Regina have in what is developed on the urban reserve? So as a matter of jurisdiction or authority, the city doesn't have any real input. But as a matter of the project as it's going forward with the memorandum of understanding and the further agreements, they're looking for a position of partnership and following the OCP intentions and all the planning intentions the city has laid out for all the other subdivisions in our city. So while we don't have an actual authority, there is a partnership being enacted willingly to ensure that it matches up to the rest of our city with all the building standards, development ideals, density projections, all of the aspects that we've planned into our city is how this development is going to come through so far, voluntarily. I hope that answers that question. Anything to add, Sandra?
I will unmute myself. So there was a couple other questions. The building standards and development plans for the project itself, as Jason alluded to, will follow with kind of standard developments within the city of Regina. The municipal services agreement that the nation would be required to sign does mean that they would pay the equivalent of property taxes. And so if our mill rate is X percent of assessed value, it's exactly how the MSA would be mirrored on urban reserve land. So yes, the city is not short taxes. They do have to come up with a separate agreement with the Regina Police Service for servicing to the site. Everything else is covered off, fire, garbage. The education portion of property taxes comes through the province, but I believe that is worked out through them as well. So we will not be short. In fact, our tax base will be added to. It'll just come through an MSA as opposed to property tax levy that we collect from individual homeowners. We'll get an MSA agreement and get a lump sum from the developers or those individual owners as they come on stream. So I think I answered that question. There is a question about commenting on the proximity of the casino to this two large elementary schools. There are numerous rules about where casinos can go and where they cannot go, but that is decades down the road. And I suspect, I would hope that as things develop up in the Northwest, that we would have more schools. So yes, and final say, the municipality of the future would have to agree when we hit the 400,000 population. The future municipality would have to agree that is within the legislation as well as it relates to casino operations. So it would be something, I'm not sure Jason and I will even be walking the earth when that casino comes. Maybe we'll just open up so many jobs here that it'll happen sooner than later. But wouldn't that be great? The reality is, yes, this is a decade discussion. And so the concept plan being floated as it was, I think in terms of their use, they were attempting to say that, casino would be an option. But again, there are a lot of rules surrounding where casinos can go. A future municipality, it's in the legislation. The city has to agree, and FSIN would have to, anoint the next ban that would be allowed to have a casino. I think Carry the Kettle is throwing it out there as an option for their future land use. Decades down the road. But again, I'm not sure there needs to be a lot of concern about this right now, because there will be a whole bunch of development that goes in well before this discussion happens. And it may well be that a casino is well outside the city limits, or another place where it's not in proximity to schools in the future.
I guess just to add a little bit there, for some who might not know this, I believe there's already 6 or 7 urban reservations in the city of Regina with these agreements in place that do pay equivalent taxes and do have those agreements set up with the Regina Police Service. Been operating that way for years, contributing to our community. It's been very positive relationships that way, and this will be the same in that aspect. I see there's another question up. What about schools? Will the new residents attend existing schools in the area? One day when they finally get there to the point of residence, I'm sure they will. Those schools right now are built in the edge of the field. There is no residence around them. So I see in our city quite often the school goes up when the subdivision's already partially erected around it. It seems to have about a 15 to 20 year shelf life, and then it seems to empty out a bit because people don't move out of the area, and you get 30 years out of the school and it kind of gets decommissioned. I think one of the positive things, although it's an awkward location right now, is that school should generally see a longer existence because of the way the different subdivisions will come up around it. And as those subdivisions grow, they'll all get their use of the school as the new residents come in there. So I have heard some talk about a high school down the road, once again, decades. This proposed development would probably be a good location for a high school. They do have a lot of other amenities planned for there, in addition to just the casino that's been quite contentious. There's a clinic and an old folks home, as well as a hotel. They are talking about some type of a recreation center for the community, for all the community. So just want to really point out the positives about the proposal, not just the one thing that seems to be a point of contention. So just to mention that. Okay, we got a couple more questions coming in here. Okay, I was told a casino could not be built because it would be too close to the schools. Can you speak to this? I believe Sandra already touched on the proximity of the casino to schools. And once again, that will be something that comes down the road when that's actually a real decision and not just a proposal. And I think that's a good point. I think common sense kind of dictates. There was never a cannabis law before. We had to pass that in council, and all the points that came out when it was something unknown and how things got fashioned all had to do with common sense that the general public and sometimes even council shares. So that's kind of how things came through for all the borders to schools and everything else. And I'm sure this would be no different. The latest press release noted that shovels could be in the ground by fall, but you keep saying this project is decades in the making. Why is this disconnect? And could there, in fact, be shovels in by fall? I can't answer why that disconnect keeps on happening. From my understanding, there's, like I said, a barrage of things to do, environmental assessments, different levels of improvement from higher levels of government, all kinds of things to go through. I think sometimes this is why they call the news, because it's new. They want to look for things that are really interesting to publicize. Sometimes it's a snippet that might not be the most pertinent snippet, or maybe context isn't applied equally. But from all the conversations I've had, this does not sound imminent to be started up right away. Any comment there, Sandra, if you're anything different?
I think one of the elements of it is in terms of, if you think about how many years it took something like Harbor Landing to develop, or one of your neighborhoods up there, it occurs over the course of years, but the prep work needed for it is equally extensive. There is some talk, I do believe, in terms of establishing a commercial entity along one of the arterial roads. And so if they're referring to a shovel in the ground, then they wouldn't have they need services to the site. And so maybe they have an answer for that. It wouldn't include city services, but the process is still, and I'm not sure when the vote is going to happen at the band in terms of the band approving the use for the site. But could they have a shovel in the ground? Perhaps, but it's probably on the pre-work for a commercial site, or whether that be a gas station or some such thing. They still have to run services, whether that's septic. They still have to deal with water and power. And so shovel in the ground may mean some of that work in terms of establishing service into a site that could potentially be an acre or 2 acre parcel, but it would be commercial in nature. To do the planning for the urban residential development is expensive. And as I said, we keep saying that's a ways down the way. Yeah, that would be the answer. If there's a shovel in the ground, it's probably potentially doing some of the preliminary work, whether that's environmental or the service provision to the site of some nature for commercial development of a small nature.
Yeah, I kind of checked in on this too, and I asked if my wording was okay to explain it this way, and they said it'd be quite similar to on Pinkey Road where Salto Junction is. They have that small Esso station with the Tim Hortons. To try to have some type of a money generating entity on the land would be a benefit to the band as they go through all this development. So I think if anything, it could be something like that. But there again, nothing that's been confirmed or laid out or any of that nature that I've been able to confirm or uncover or be suggested. Here we go. I got another question up. Any word when Wayland will be extended to west so parents can pick up the children from the back of the schools and a pedestrian walk to cross Courtney? This would help with the congestion around the schools. No, I can't say as I've heard any word on when Wayland will be extended. This isn't a confirmed statement, but just the best of my understanding for how this development will kind of unroll. The developer is Rosewood. They're trying to make some housing available so they can start moving the development through. I would imagine it's going to be how quickly that those developed locations get sold and interest in further development in that area to dictate when that road crossover will come. They have quite a few spots serviced already that they have to fill up before they start extending their services further. And I think there's a couple of overall necessary infrastructure assets like a pumping station and some limitations within the city's infrastructure that has to be addressed as more development comes in that corner. So anything to add, Sandra? Have you heard much? Oh, you're on mute.
The most offset words this last year. I said, no, I was actually taking notes because I actually want to kind of have a look at it. There's another question I'll let you address, but it's interesting in terms of where this is at in terms of where the school has gone and the traffic to that.
Yeah, well, as I was mentioning before, just the way the staging of this development happened with the school being outside of any residential so far, it's kind of made an interesting situation right through my first term. So yeah, perfect. Next question up. What would the reason to extend Dewalt Avenue into the new development? I think they mean Diefenbaker Avenue, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, I see Dewalt here. Into the new development, this will bring unnecessary traffic into Skyview when Diefenbaker Drive could be used. A Dewalt extension into Skyview and the Diefenbaker extension on the outskirts of Skyview, I would imagine maybe access to the park or just connectivity. Looking at Maple Ridge to Lakewood or Lake Ridge, the connection across the track, I'd imagine there being a mirroring of that just for connectivity between subdivisions. But once again, it's concept plan. There's nothing fixed in here or roads built yet. If it follows the concepts of the rest of the development of our city, I guess that Dewalt Avenue would be in line with what to built over here in Maple Ridge and beside us, Lake Ridge, and what follows that track line down the CN tracks. So I guess we'll wait to see as something gets closer to actually being a proper plan. Okay, next question up. Will Courtney become double lane each way to help with traffic congestion? Just curious. So there is a community plan for Courtney to be doubled for both lanes in the future, and that coincides with the development of Rosewood and Coopertown. The development of those two subdivisions triggered the necessary funds to build the infrastructure we're all looking for to make Courtney more passable with more lanes. When that will happen will be once again triggered on when development happens, how quickly our city grows, how many people are looking to move into this corner of the city, and how many houses are being bought and sold. Melissa Cater says, thank you both for taking the time to answer our questions. Very much appreciated. Thank you, Melissa. Happy to answer them. It's a great chance to communicate and pass some information along. Okay, where's the next question here? Looks like we're caught up for right now. Okay, I'll go back to my sheet of things that we've talked about since there's been some questions about pathways and sidewalks between subdivisions, missing pathway connections. This has been talked about quite a bit as a council. The ones I've been dealing with mainly are between Skyview and Lake Ridge. Many of our subdivisions were built without those necessary walkways phased between them. The money for those walkways and sidewalks has never been identified yet. It's kind of crept through the decades. I know that Courtney Street pathway made about 3 decades before it finally had some type of pathway there. And I don't think that any of the residents want to see that type of action happen again. So as we've come through this, and especially with all the new faces on council, I know that's something that's been talked about and does have some policy papers coming back towards us to deal with better in the future. So I can't say that I can know the work plans or when this is happening, but I know this is a deal with more than just our corner of Regina and mentioned by more than just me. Have you been hearing from other councillors, Sandra? Have they had any more success or any more problems? What have you been hearing? What's the word on the street?
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh. Not specifically, no. Not. I don't think it's unique to your ward, but I just think there may have been some other pressing issues in other wards. Let's say that. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, it sounds fair. There's always a hot spot. I know that when my ward had the school open up, my pathway leapfrogged everyone else's pathways because I had a real pedestrian issue, especially with the school bus changes from the province. So that's part of the trick I think that administration runs into when they lay out all their work plans is it's a real changing playing field all the time. I know there's lots of problems to deal with, but sometimes what you're planning on dealing a year from now becomes back burner because there's an even bigger deal from another level or another situation to deal with. So I think sometimes they have problems bouncing the ball that way.
I think that's fair. I will tell you that some of the transit money, so the federal government is coming out with additional funding for transit and some permanent transit funding, but what they've included in some of that transit funding is actually active transportation, meaning pathways. And so we are going to continue to submit applications, providing there's continued funds available to make sure that we're creating that connectivity throughout the entire city. This start and stop kind of business is, I think, aggravating. I did hear about it kind of during the campaign, not necessarily from councillors directly, but I think the good news is coming out of the federal government is there is this pursuit of wanting to make sure pathways are connected. I hear about that from some individual citizens every now and again, where you just get to the end of a path and what are you supposed to do?
Well, they really stepped it up. When I was a young guy, all they had was the participation commercials, and now they give money out for pathways and you've got streams and all kinds of stuff. It's crazy.
I think it's recognizing that so the federal government has a mandate as it relates to transportation, both from greening just as well as the accessibility, inclusivity of public transit, but acknowledging that that's not just buses, right? Like there's this element to it, which is they're trying to support people moving about urban centers. Sorry, there you go.
Oh, perfect. Sorry.
If there's money available, we should utilize it and make the city.
It's our tax money in the end. We should get every cent we can get our hands on to make sure we get our fair share back. Just to follow up, I have a question we kind of touched on earlier, but I'll just touch on it again for those that are just tuning in. When you use the word partnership, will the residents of Maple Ridge and other Northwest communities have any input, meaning for the proposed development? And how would the band or the city of Regina go about gathering this input from neighboring residents? So this input would be sought by the band, and they've already indicated that they want that input. I would imagine they would be putting together some type of engagement sessions with the surrounding neighbors who are interested to both probably have a chance to educate and take input in for what people's expectation, what they might like to see in the area would be. And once again, that's all voluntary. They have said outright that they totally intend to take input from people. And I find that to be very heartening in the situation to know that cooperation is being looked for. So yeah, they are saying there will be a chance for input. Next question up. Why is Dewalt Avenue blocked off with concrete barriers? It is a road which the taxpayers paid for, so why is it blocked? Is this normal practice for the city to block roads off? It's my fault. I had that road blocked off when Skyview was first opened up and I first became a councillor. There was a problem with, I'll say, partying in that park after hours. Lots of congregation of street racers and cars, and being that there wasn't a lot of, well, there is no residential bordering around the park, it turned into a problem with debris left behind afterwards for the kids playing the next day. So graciously, administration helped me to block the street off so the cars could no longer congregate and race around there. And it was to help calm down the area. So Dewalt there was, that's what happened there. I guess if that's a problem with the barriers, my email address is jmancini@regina.ca. My phone number is 306-519-0078. Just give me a little bit input. I did ask for that change to be made, and those were the reasons. Okay, are you going to finally listen to residents and what they are saying about this, or are you going to follow your own agenda? I don't have my own agenda. I'm putting this on to try to offer the residents the knowledge I have on this matter. Here to listen. Like I said, I don't get to vote on this. This isn't my my authority that the residents of Ward 9 have given me. I'm just offering anything I've heard and trying to look to reinforce the spirit of cooperation that's been shown. So once again, no agenda, trying to listen. I hope people take time to listen here too, to understand that this is actually a positive development. Lacey Weeks, we need pathways to schools. I agree with you, Lacey. Nothing that I can do today or anything else, but I'll say outright that a pathway along the backside of this proposed development, so Skyview can be connected to St. Nicholas and Plainsview Elementary, is so needed before 3 decades from now, so all the future generations of children can actually walk to school outside of traffic. Please go ahead, Sandra.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question. Is there a reason there's not right now?
Not a pathway along the backside here. Other than funding, planning, things like that, none that I know of. The pathways between Skyview and Lake Ridge weren't finished when Skyview was built, let alone a pathway behind my house that would connect to Plainsview and the schools out off of Courtney there on Mapleford Gate. Yeah, I think it's a very important pathway. So there we go. Lacey, we got some action. We got the mayor on our side now. Oh, she's not even laughing. Oh, there she goes.
I was writing that down. Sorry. I was writing that down. I have to make sure I make proper notes to follow up on things.
Okay. Oh, I just got a bit of action regarding Dewalt being blocked off. It would make more sense to actually police the area. Once again, I guess this leads into a budgetary item. The budget proposal this year is 2.34%. A big portion of that is for policing. 8 officers they want to add to their roster. We've been I think about 20 officers per 100,000 people low in our city. Our police operate at a very efficient rate that they've looked after what we have in our city for problems. Having said that, I know that I've had a lot of problems for congregating, and having police have an effect on that's been very tough. So I wish we had an easier time. That was the best solution I could find at the time with the assets we had, and I was very grateful that administration came forward and helped me along with that. Maybe with the extra officers, we could look at different solutions in the future. So yeah, once again, blocking off roads. I guess it's not a connector road either, and it doesn't lead to anyone's residence or house. So I didn't see a big harm in that. I guess maybe you want to cruise up and down there, but I didn't. Oh, now I went and screwed up the mouse. Give me 1 second, people.
Jason, there was a question in here from earlier on, I haven't scrolled down yet, from Lauren Els in terms of commenting on development requiring a police agreement. Will the police have the same jurisdiction and rights on this land, or they be unable to provide enforcement? No, it's exactly the same. It's just required because the police are have their own police act under the provincial legislation, Cities Act, Policing Act. And so it's the two acts dictate that there has to be a municipal services agreement with the city and then an agreement with the RPS, but they operate just like they would operate in any neighborhood.
Okay. Just to mention it here, we're still going down with the blockades. So this is turning into how the young people of our community like to congregate in their cars and where they like to congregate. Once I managed to get them out of the park over there, they moved over to Diefenbaker at the west end of Balzer. When I get messages like this, I'm sure to let the chief know where the hotspots in our area are, as well as the school over by Mapleford there. There again, I've noticed since living in our area that there seems to be a lot of representation of residents that seem to be police officers as well. So just to say it out loud, if you're viewing and witnessing things, chances are you got a neighbor who is representative of the RPS who's probably viewing and witnessing it too. And I know when I've talked to the neighbors that I have here that they seem quite well aware of what's going on. But I have followed up and let the chief know where the hotspots are in our area on top of that. Parties now moved to Beefbaker. Yeah, okay, we're on that already. This type of urban reserve is unprecedented in the city of Regina. Is there other cities and urban reserves we could look at as an example? So basically this urban reserve is unprecedented in Regina. We do have 7 urban reserves in Regina, but this is the first with this type of residential and development aspect. And although I forgot the name of the cities in BC, I know this is a prominent feature that many First Nations in BC have gone through over the past decades to a lot of success. And I know that success has been carried by local media and talked about. So maybe you have a better recollection of what some of the municipalities are, Sandra. Any chance?
I believe in total, from the last report I read, there were 28 in the province of Saskatchewan. And so if you were to look along the Saskatoon has the most. They're a little bit further ahead in this. Back in the 90s, there was an office tower downtown that had applied for urban reserve status. And I can tell you at the time in the early 90s, that was going to be the end of the world. And it has been the complete opposite. So what's the benefit of an urban reserve? Number one, if they own the property, they are entitled, according to the treaty, to apply for urban reserve status. What urban reserve status does for them from a fairness and economic opportunity is any business that locates there that is Indigenous owned or Indigenous owned, sorry, it has to be Indigenous owned. They have an arrangement with the federal government relative to their income taxes. They still pay the equivalent of property taxes, equivalent of all service fees, et cetera, to the city that they exist in. But it does create employment opportunity for the band and for other Indigenous members of the community. So that's the benefit of an urban reserve, and it's their benefit. They're entitled to that, and they are the landowner. So in terms of fitting in with the OCP and with normal development within the city of Regina, we're still going to go along those lines. Residential, commercial, a little bit of light industrial, and that's the band's prerogative to develop that land. They could very well sell off portions of those 320 acres, I think, give or take. They can still sell off. They could sell off to a residential developer, the portion of the residential component if they wanted to. They will probably sell off certain tranches of land. It won't be all band developed, but it'll be band controlled and then sold potentially. So that's, I think, I'm hoping I answered that question. But, and in terms of engagement, if that same piece of 300 acres were to sell to Harvard Developments, I'm not sure how we engage other neighborhoods in other neighborhood developments. I don't believe that we do. There's just, again, rules to follow in terms of development, proximity to schools, all of those things. All of those rules kind of apply. But it's just a different developer in this case, happens to be Care of the Kettle Nation.
Thanks, Sandra. I guess I got a question here. Why is it a positive development for who? And have I even spoken to the residents about this and what they think about this? I guess I see it as a positive development because it's a local company, a local Indigenous company looking to be the developer. I think that's a real positive news story. I think it's positive for anyone who is in the Home Builders Association or in the trades or, looking to expand our city. That's who it's positive for. And as for speaking to the residents about this, I didn't know about this before the start of February. It was the first I had heard of it. Since hearing about it, I think I've spoke to over 30 people. I received lots of emails. I've made a point of reaching out and phoning just about every one of them that's offered a phone number. And the ones that haven't, I've made sure got followed up with an email. And for the ones I missed there, I believe administration followed up with email as well. It was probably one of the biggest pushes behind this engagement session to make sure people were aware of what's going on, because there seemed to be a lot of trepidation. And some people seem to be wanting to just complain to complain. And I thought maybe just to get the truth out so people realize the facts of this might alleviate a little bit of concern. Lots of question about who knew what, when, and how, and why I wouldn't have told people this earlier or anything like that. Like I said, I found about this in February. For the record, if you look out my window, that is the proposed land right there. I bought a house here. I'm not really thinking twice about it. I think that it'll be good for both my property values, my neighborhood, and good neighbors. So I hope that helps alleviate some concerns people might have. Got some more messages here. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Jason, Amy Standish just wrote in, has the concept plan been submitted to the city for formal review yet? And if the city has concerns with any parts of the plan, can the city require changing before signing a municipal services? There's no concept plan. Concept plan wouldn't come to the city of Regina. So if we rewind this again, they may have an interest in developing a gas station or a Tim Hortons kind of in the near future. But the development of these acres require a massive amount of infrastructure, which would be years in terms of putting in place, that the developer pays for as well. And so the plans that would eventually come to the city would be, again, just like any other developer would produce plans. There's kind of guidelines or rules within the OCP and within permanent planning. Those things still have to be followed. So I'm not sure. They only have an MOU. They don't even have a municipal servicing agreement. They don't have band approval yet, which is another hurdle they have to get through. And then again, in terms of they need the MSA in order to go for urban reserve status. So this is typically how these come forward is you would never go after 300 acres at the same time. You would, if they're going to start with a gas station on the corner of perhaps Armour Road, and I'm just speaking, there's nothing confirmed here because there's no application. But if they were to do that, typically what would happen potentially is, you'd have a certain number of acres that they would bring on stream, because to develop 300 acres, regardless of what you develop it into, is a massive amount of money, an incredible amount of infrastructure, and it would take some time to do. So that's kind of where it's at right now. Is band needs approval, MSA needs to be signed, and if they want to do something with regard to perhaps a gas station in Tim Hortons, unlike Sacamays, I think there's a process involved in that, which is probably months, if not a couple of years in the making.
Thanks, Sandra. Next question up. What are your thoughts regarding a truck stop this close to schools? Once again, right now, when it's the only thing between the truck stop and the school is nothing in a field, it looks very close in proximity. If I'm understanding this correctly, on the corner of Armour Road and Courtney Street, out in the corner there, thinking of proximity to the bypass, and being that I look out my back window quite often and seeing the amount of trucks that go down Armour Road already, I can't say as I would really think that that would be a point of contention. It'd be different if that truck stop was on Mapleford Gate or closer in. I would be a lot more concerned about it. I think it looks closer than it is right now because a little bit of optical illusion because of the bald prairie, but that's just how I'm thinking of it right now when I start to give it a little bit of thought.
I think there's another question here as it relates to, I think, Maple Street. Again, the architects for Carry the Kettle, when they were doing up their concept plan, which is just, here's what we're thinking, residential to residential, which is a requirement of the OCP, or what the design for that existing land north of the current residential is right now. They plug in a concept plan and then suggest things. That's still the city. Again, this is development by development, not 300 acres at the same time, other than perhaps suggesting where residential is going to go or where commercial or light industrial might go. But any tie-in to anything will depend upon where that particular adjacent neighborhoods are at the time. And if, as you say, Maple Street is a very quiet street, usually what would happen is they try to feed it out to more of an arterial road. So that's how they work right now. I'm not sure why it would work any different in any new subdivision like this.
Picked up a question there about the length of time to negotiate a municipal service agreement, 3 months or a year. I think you mentioned that already, Sandra. There's a lot of different layers of government and context that it can't really define the answer that quickly to 3 months a year, but the general thought is it's going to be in excess of a year. That'd be a good summary there, Sandra?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's, I'm not sure when the vote is even going to happen at the band, but they can't enter into negotiations for an MSA without band approval. So I'm not sure where that is, but that vote hasn't happened yet, sometime this year. And then they would enter into negotiations after that.
Perfect. Another comment here. I can feel my property taxes going up, even though they go up more than enough every year as it is, and even though you say it won't negatively affect property taxes. Yes, property taxes are on their increase. I guess I wish I could say it'd be like trying to counter the sands of times. I never seen them go the other way, and I'm getting to be a fairly old adult now. But I have to say it's been a very hard year on all of us. Administration was very responsible with what they've proposed to us. Administration themselves are not asking for any type of an increase to run their operation. And that's even considering the increase in cost of materials and everything that's gone along with the pandemic. So I wish I could take all the pain out of property tax increases, but it's realistic, and I don't have that kind of power. I'm not that good a magician, sorry. So when this new development decreases the home values in Maple Ridge, will the city reduce our property taxes? Well, I don't think that's really a fair statement. I can't see how that would reduce my home's value. And just to mention this out loud for the people in Maple Ridge, you should be quite happy about being in Maple Ridge. It's the last of the subdivisions that is going to be built this way with single family homes. You'll look around, everything being built is a higher density build. So if anything, I'd be thinking that as these new subdivisions come online, the last of the single family home subdivisions should continue to increase in property as the years go forward. So just a thought that I've had being a homeowner here, I thought I'd share with you. Next up, you know that it isn't a quiet street, Diefenbaker. Oh, block off the end of Diefenbaker by Balzer. So I guess that's back to the comments on the partying teenagers at the cars, and I will pass it along. I did ask administration to try to do some type of a traffic deterrent there, similar to what happened over on Dewalt Avenue, but they couldn't quite get that together. Sorry about that, with the traffic accommodations. I thought maybe we could make some magic there the same way, but they haven't been able to get it together. Okay, thank you for all addressing all the questions. I know there was similar development in Termland of this north of Hawkstone. Could this be considered for a casino for further from residential and commercial as a buffer? So the land over by Hawkstone, would that be a better location for the casino? I know nothing about that land over there. Do you know anything, Sandra? No? No,
I don't know anything about the land over by Hawkstone. And I guess I would just qualify this again. We have a casino downtown, which services our city. In terms of growth for a second casino, it would be, we would have to be approaching a population size of approximately 400,000. And if we're approaching that population size, I'm going to assume that we will have filled out some other subdivisions and it would push it kind of even further at that point in time. But usually they would attach to commercial light industrial. There is, commercial arteries and kind of more primary spaces. But again, there is not even a determination by FSIN as to who would be the sponsor band member for another casino because it is a ways away.
And very sought after by many bands as well, so. Next up, is there still going to be a 30-meter buffer? I hate when the screen jumps like that, between Maple Ridge and the new development. We were told there'd be a buffer when we built. Yes, I can answer that question. There will be a 30-meter buffer because it's part of the storm runoff plan for the city for drainage. Oh, next comment talked about it anyways, because there is a drainage ditch for Maple Ridge. So that will be a thing. It should kind of mirror what's gone on between Skyview and Lake Ridge, if you just want to kind of have an idea of context or what it might look like. Oh, sorry for bumping there, no problem at all. Mr. Mancinelli, it's never good when it's Mr. Mancinelli. You stated that you only knew about the native development February. You made a similar statement about the blue bins on Sherwood. Is the info not being passed on to the various councillors? Mr. Smith, I would like to say that it's everyone else's fault but mine on everything. I know that I get a lot of information from administration and they make me look smart a lot of the time. In these two instances, the blue bins would have been administration's responsibility. And I think there might have been a ball dropped in informing me, and I won't take the blame for what I didn't do. But in terms of the native development, I don't know when administration would have been made aware of that because it's not administration's plan. So in the blue bins, I think there might have been a little bit of a disconnect. I'll blame it on a combination of either the election or COVID or a combination of everything. I would have really appreciated a heads up and a chance to look at the alternate locations before those bins showed up, or at least to had a proper chance to engage the residents about what was happening so they were aware. I thought it viewed pretty poor on both myself and the city, so I can see the reason for your comments. But having said that, it's not a long-standing problem. I've got a lot of good information out of administration as well, so I don't want to throw everyone under the bus at once. They've done a lot of good things my way as a councillor, assisted me when I needed information, and helped me achieve some of the things I've gotten done on behalf of the Ward 9 residents. So I guess that's the long and short of it. Sandra, I guess you get a lot more under the gun moments than I do. How's your information stream been?
Relative to this, I clearly didn't know anything about the blue bins nor understand the process, but I'm happy to educate myself after this one. And the Carry the Kettle, actually, we were approached, I think it came forward in February to executive. I'm trying to get my timing right here. So procedurally how this works is that the band would reach out to administration would prepare a report that would come to executive vote sends to council. That's the process. And so they reached out to administration, I believe, a couple weeks before, 2 to 3 weeks before council would have sought an exec. And again, in terms of an MOU, it's not binding, but it is about attempting to build that partnership for land, frankly, that they own. I think there had been an earlier question in terms of who owns that land. They have owned it for a couple decades. So if someone was given misinformation about who owns the land north of them, I can apologize potentially for someone else's oversight or error, but would seem to be a little flat. I'm not sure why that would have been miscommunicated, but they have owned it for quite some time.
Thanks. A couple more questions here. Yeah, now I jumped again. It had to do with the efficiency review. Is the efficiency? Sorry, let me get to the bottom of the page here. How is the research in defining efficiencies at City Hall going? If anything can reduce our property taxes, that should be it. And I guess the efficiency review has been voted on. We've freed up a little bit of a go-ahead to get a consultant online to do an outside review on administration. As a councillor whose second term is happening, I know in my first term, we were looking for a lot of efficiencies to offset some of the provincial decisions on spending and repercussions that kind of rang through the city. I'm looking forward to having an external source come and look over what's already been done in that regard to either give it a little bit of verification and add to the efficiencies found, and a little bit of insight into how well the city's actually run. I think it's a very good thing to have this go on. Sandra, this was your push. Please take the mic and explain well, because you always do.
This is my push. I think, the way I termed it during my campaign was about value for tax dollars. Like we all do, everybody pays property taxes, everybody pays user taxes, fees, whatnot in the city of Regina. And this is about, in 2004, we had an independent agency come in, and typically they're accounting firms, and they come in and they do deep dives into departments to determine, it's not just about finding ways to save money. In fact, oftentimes it's found where can time or money be freed up for investment in things that will either digitize things like booking ice, to have that go online, to investment in some software that could make running something easier and free up other people's time. So this is very much, I think it's about time, and the independent nature of it is kind of crucial, because we all do it. We all go about our day, we go about our jobs, even the things we do at home. Well, I've always done it that way. And it's about being able to test what we're doing against other municipalities for benchmarking. But just even in terms of the innovation that other municipalities have come up with, and ways to save money or find money or time somewhere and reinvest it somewhere else, which is necessary in order to achieve the service level standards or enhanced services that we're currently providing. So we're going to do phase one, and typically, because it's a very large organization, we break them up. And so we probably do a few phases, but phase one will look at 6 to 8 departments, and you go in and you do a deep dive, and it comes back into council, and the independent consultant would be reporting back directly into council. We also have a recovery and efficiency committee who is looking at testing some things perhaps outside the internal deep dive, but just at some external pain points with the city of Regina, and looking for COVID recovery and places we should be targeting, or perhaps could be going after a little more aggressively to come out of COVID and kind of this stagnation that we've been experiencing for the last number of years.
Thanks, Sandra. Up to the next question. The traffic calming curbs on Whalen by the school are useless and a huge problem in the winter when it snows. How on earth are these more effective than the 4 speed bumps that were there? I guess oftentimes in council, I hear the question, what are other municipalities doing? Speed bumps have proven ineffective and unwanted across Canada, I believe, for clearing snow problems. Primarily, they rip up our equipment like crazy. These traffic calming curbs are meant to put a restriction in and cause a little bit of a gap to make people aware of an area where they should be slowing down more and not so free moving. They are just a pilot project right now. I guess your type of feedback on how effective they are might be the same type of feedback the city's taking in to see whether to do this in the future or not. I know that they're one of the cheaper traffic calming measures they can take, and they are recreatable, so there's some advantages if they work. But if they don't work and they're nothing but torn apart by equipment, that's the type of information we're looking back by trying a pilot project. So just for the record, every time I go to scroll through the questions, I go back to the top of the list and I have to find my way back down and play around. I'm sorry if I look dumb doing this, but it's really annoying.
I can read the next question for you, because I learned my lesson about 10 minutes ago. Will there be a required minimum amount of green space? And I'm assuming this is about the carry the kettle acres. The conceptual drawing shows little to no green space. Again, our OCP does require us to have a certain amount of green space within any development, and so the rule would apply, yes.
And just to kind of follow up, it's not going to be a real for carry the kettle. It's a voluntary offer that they've made to us, because of course it's a different situation. You knew that. I'm just being proper. Is there a requirement to have Coopertown developed before this new area? So all our development in Regina is private development. The city of Regina doesn't have a land bank like other municipalities do. With a land bank, they would own the lands around our city, and we'd be able to control what we develop and try to time that development accordingly. No one made that investment for where we live. So we're kind of at the mercy for trying to cooperate with developers in all kinds of different situations. Coopertown, Rosewood, and Carry the Kettle development are an example of this. They'll be staged when the need is there and where some of these entities see the business case to start development. Sometimes they have multiple developments in different sides of the city, and there's only so many resources for investment. So oftentimes this comes back to a business decision as opposed to a municipality decision for what's best for the municipality. And I think this is kind of unveiling in our corner. We live in a lake bed. Everything we have here for water both has to be pumped into our city and pumped out of our city when it's stormwater and wastewater. With that, there's pumping stations throughout our city. In the northwest corner right now, our pumping station is at capacity with the finishing of Maple Ridge, and I believe with the addition of the homes in Rosewood currently. I think before there's any more large numbers of people added in this corner, they have to update that pumping capacity. And I think the investment in that pumping station dictates tens and tens of millions of dollars, not just $1 million or $2 million. And that's going to be bore through SAF fees and developers to do. They're going to be analyzing things like timeline to payback and where to start to invest in. So once again, this all comes back to business decisions on developers. Anything to add, Sandra?
I would just add that it would be helpful if we had some more jobs and we're coming out of COVID with a strong recovery plan and expansion or establishment of some new businesses, because that's going to drive residential development more than anything else will.
I have to agree, and always on the lookout for that. I don't see any more questions here. I think we're through the gamut and we're through our hour. I'd like to say thank you very much to everyone who tuned in. Thanks a lot for taking the time, Sandra, for coming out and helping to answer all the questions. Like I say, if anyone has any comments, please don't get a hold of me on Facebook. I don't do Facebook. You can email me. You can call me, 306-519-0078. If too many people call me at once, I might take a little bit to call you back, but I will call you back. And thanks for taking the time to listen, and try to help you guys with whatever I can. Have a good night.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everyone.